When I was talking about the show, I thought to myself, this would be a really great resource for new parents and new mothers that are in the position that I'm in, that have questions, that don't know what to ask. And this was going to be a way for me to kind of find out what those questions were for myself.
My background is in human and organizational systems and human development. And just based on my own birth experiences, which were a number of years ago, I've come to the conclusion that people want to make their own choices, but they want to make informed choices. So what we're aiming to do with this TV series is to present information, to bring in subject matter experts, to talk to parents, and explore the kaleidoscope of choices that are available to new parents. We live in a world full of choices, and parenting is no different. As new parents, we may already be questioning ourselves as we find our way on the transformation to parenthood. We're sensitive. In this episode, we'll understand why our differences can sometimes seem so strong, and we'll talk about and model how to deal with them respectfully.
When dealing with differences that moms have, it really comes down to the fact that it doesn't really matter. It only matters what is right for you and your family. I know a lot of people really truly believe that one way is the right way, but unless you're walking in those mom's shoes, you don't know what information she's drawing on to make those decisions for her family.
I feel that the way parents choose to parent is ultimately the right way, and we really need to come together to support each other, because there is no wrong way.
Motherhood can be a bit of a hotbed for competition, sadly, and that's something that I try and teach in my prenatal classes as paramount importance, that your experience is a unique experience. And the love that you have between yourself and your child, it's not going to have labels on it. No one is going to decide based on what you've done or how you've birthed or how you've breastfed, whether or not that's there. That's between you and your child and your family, really. But sadly, people they have a hard time getting that.
I think when a woman becomes a mother, her social circle changes as well. First of all, they'll see her differently. The way that they experienced her before will, by definition, be different when she's a mother, because her availability may be different, her interests may be different, her social network may or may not have had children before, may or may not have children in the same ages, may or may not have made the same choices that she's making. I've known many women over the years to lose friends through becoming a mother. People that they've been lifelong friends with may step away from them because there are so many differences in the way they parent, and it feels so personal. And when you make a choice different from the choice that your best friend made, it feels almost to your friend, I would imagine, like she's being disrespected if you make a different decision for your family. So very often women will find themselves without their former support network, needing to find a new support network who are more in sync with the way that they're thinking.
Well, when I think about sort of philosophical questions around how to make the world a better place for the next generation of kids here, I think about things like tolerance and acceptance and being non-judgmental and embracing diversity and celebrating differences. And I think that if we want to pass this on as part of our legacy to kids today, we have to really model that ourselves. And parents, there's a lot of pressure around parenting. We all want to do the best that we can. And I think my theory on why there's so much harsh judgment between parents these days is that there is doubt is a real natural part of parenthood, because we're so committed to wanting to do the best we can. It's really natural to experience some doubt along the way. Are we making the best decision around how to feed our baby, how to sleep our baby, how to discipline our children? And so with that doubt, I think it can be pretty tempting to seek something that we can feel certain about, and that certainty almost provides a bit of a false sense of comfort, because it's uncomfortable to be unsure and to have doubt and to experience ambiguity. With certainty, when parents kind of slip into feeling certain that there is one right way or one best way to make various decisions about parenting, then I think that's where people get into being judgmental of each other. And so the more we can kind of encourage parents to embrace that ambiguity and let go of the need to have certainty and just accept doubt as a real natural part of parenting, I think the more likely we could see a little less judgment and some more acceptance and tolerance of each other.
Now, we introduce you to parenting professionals who discuss an area where there are often strong differences: crying. You'll hear how they agree on some things, but there are definitely differences in their views. They take a touchy subject, explain the basis of their views, and model how to respectfully disagree. We'll leave it to you to decide what your view is.
Crying is probably one of the hardest topics to try to comfort parents over. Of course, nobody ever likes to hear their own baby cry, and that's a natural survival mechanism that parents don't just ignore that. It's very hard. However, babies have always needed to cry since they began. Can be maybe gas or becoming overstimulated or having missed a nap, and crying is what I try to help parents understand from my perspective, which I'll own that, is that crying can actually accomplish some helpful things for a baby. Not that you want to have it happen purposely just to get rid of gas, but it does. It's a very reflexive behavior that a baby goes through when they're crying, and it expels gas. Everybody's surprised to hear that because they've been trying so hard to pat them and get rid of the gas, the parent doing it. It also helps with being overstimulated, and it is very easy for newborn babies and toddlers to get overstimulated these days because families are so busy and people are coming and going, and it's far busier lifestyle than young children used to have. And crying down that overstimulation is very effective. You can walk them or rock them for an hour, but they can handle it themselves if they're just allowed to do that short term. And it also helps them design their self-calming strategies so that they can learn how to put themselves to sleep and back to sleep if they wake up in the night, once they're past the age of needing to be fed through the night.
I have a couple things to say about crying, and I think one is that when I talk with parents, it's typical that their babies cry maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour a day at most. But the research that I've looked at is based on babies crying 3 to 5 hours a day in North America. In other parts of the world, research shows that babies cry much less than that. Most of the parents that I work with come to me because they're responding to their babies in the first place. So babies that are supported tend to learn non-crying behaviors to ask for what they need. Babies that are sort of left to work it out on their own tend to learn crying behaviors to ask for what they need. So the basic rhythm of communication is formed in those very, very early days, those very, very early months. And so when the baby gets to the point of needing to cry to ask for what they need, then they don't learn those non-crying behaviors. So I think it's super important to learn those non-crying behaviors to ask for what they need. And what that means is that we're responsive to them. We respond when they do something else that indicates a need. So there we are, baby's tired, they need, they need comfort. That doesn't mean they will never cry, but when they cry, we're there to comfort them, and we teach them and help them learn to come through and learn to manage disappointment. I find that it's very rarely necessary for a baby to cry extendedly at nighttime. The only time that might happen is in a situation where they haven't learned that skill in the daytime yet. And I would never recommend doing that. I would recommend instead building that resilience in the daytime, building the baby's ability to manage disappointment and come out the other side, rather than introducing into a relationship where that is not established in the middle of the night for the first time. Okay, now you're going to need to figure out how to go to sleep on your own. Good luck, see you later, right? Yeah. So that's where I have that question. When do we learn to manage the disappointment? Do we do it in the daytime, or do we do it for the first time ever in the middle of the night?
I would say that most children can't self-soothe in the first year. In terms of brain development, it's mostly about sensory input, sensory output. So if you look how the brain develops, it's usually from the brainstem up the brainstem to the back. Actually, we use this for the brain to teach. So brain development starts in the brainstem, it goes to the back, lastly to the prefrontal cortex. So they're hungry, they cry. They're tired, they cry. They're overstimulated, they cry. It's sensory input, output. Sure, they may find their hand and suck on that, and that's self-soothing, but you can't teach self-soothing to a baby. So what we say is we're looking at crying as a stress response, right? So baby's stressed for some reason, and it's what we call tolerable stress, because it's not positive stress, it's not fun, it's tolerable. And tolerable stress is okay for children and adults if it's comforted by an adult or a comfort person. So babies do need comforting. When it rolls over into toxic stress, that is characterized by tolerable stress that is not supported by comfort measures. So, and there is evidence out there that shows toxic stress, when a baby's crying and not being picked up, they release cortisol, and that can affect the development of the brain neurons. So I tell parents, do you want a smart child? If they're crying, pick them up. Very simple. It's worked for 10,000 years. Why wouldn't it work now? So.
But how do you handle it, Judy, when the parent trying to do exactly what you've suggested, which is always pick them up and provide comfort 24/7, and that parent or both parents are wearing down?
Welcome back. Let's hear how the panel discusses Kitty's question at the end of the last segment about how weary parents can cope. Our panel will then wrap it up with words of encouragement.
Well, in response to your question, and I feel sleep is a most basic need, and I understand from being a parent myself 5 times that bone tiredness, absolutely. And I think our job as society and coaches is to, you can't say to parents, you got to meet your needs in lieu of meeting your child's. And meeting a child's needs is your paramount task as parents. So what are you doing to build your support system? What can we as a community, a village, do to support parents? Because it takes a village to cherish a parent, to nurture the child. So I would say if you tap into friends, I encourage them to accept all offers of help. I encourage people who are trying to help a new parent, don't say, oh, here's my number, call me if you need anything. Say, I'm going to be at your house at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow, you're going to go nap. I'll take the baby. And it's not...
You're talking PM though rather than AM, right?
Well, depends how good your friends are.
That's right. Well, and I think that support is so important. The other side of it is that babies can get into habits where they're waking up more frequently than they need to, and they can learn to go back to sleep, but that can be offered to them and that can be taught to them in a gradual way. It doesn't have to be done all at once. It doesn't have to be responding in a specific way, right? And so at one point, babies have needs and they have preferences. And when that baby starts to develop preferences, your role is not to always respond to the preference, but your role is certainly to respond to the need. So how can you respond to the preference in a way that may, you're still there, you're still physically supporting them. Maybe you're patting now instead of carrying or bouncing on the yoga ball all night long, right? And so you don't have to bounce on the yoga ball all night long. Maybe you're patting, and then maybe next week, baby will tolerate the next step and having you sit in the chair nearby, calming them, but you're still there physically with them, comforting them. So I think because we now know, that a gradual process is possible, we don't have to go all or nothing. We don't have to go responding in the way the baby is requesting every single time. And we don't have to go not responding to the baby at all. We can teach the baby to accept a different kind of response.
I think what parents are missing is you don't have to, babies don't have preferences in the first year. That's more into toddlerhood, right? You can teach them to self-soothe, but the first year is all about attachment and building the fact that when they have a need, and all their needs and wants the first year needs.
Well, and I don't mean, okay, so when I say preferences, I don't mean, I'm not talking about self-soothing. I'm talking about, I want the blue cup. Right?
Yeah, that's in the second year. Well, that's not in the first year.
Well, I think in the first year when they're 6 months old and they want the blue cup, and it's okay to say, sorry, you can't have the blue cup, right? That's all I'm saying with the preferences. You want the blue cup, okay. What you want to be picked up, you know what, I'm gonna lie beside you because I'm too tired to pick you up right now, but I'm right here, right? And so teaching that you can accept this slightly different response to your need. But that's different than not responding to the child in the middle of the night. That's kind of what I'm saying. So I'm agreeing with you.
So I gave each of you a little bit more time. I want to give Kitty just a few seconds here.
It's too easy these days to not have faith in what babies are born capable of. And I certainly agree that when a baby has a definite need and it's daytime, it's not to do with sleep. I think obviously responsiveness is very important. I think attachment, building a secure attachment between a parent and a child, Judy and I differ on that. I think it's a lot easier done than some believe. I think it's a process of falling head over heels in love with the child, and the child having enough time with you to fall head over heels in love with the parent as well. And I don't think that it requires, my opinion is that it does not require such religious responsiveness. I think babies can learn to wait. They can learn that their crying is okay. It's not upsetting anybody, but they've been fed and they've been carried recently. And it's okay for them to have some time crying. That may just be what they need. And so that's where I come to the process.
So I'm imagining someone's watching this show and they're like, okay, I watched this because I thought I was gonna figure something out, and they may now be saying, wow, like I'm even more confused.
Yes.
What would be your final comment or thought to a mom that's grappling or struggling with this? Something that she could take for her, not necessarily about I have to, but what do moms need to know? And keeping in mind that having these varying perspectives, like listening to all of you, you've been very respectful to each other, you've disagreed, and that's okay, and that's I think very important for mothers to be able to, we need to be having these conversations. But what would be your final comment? I'll give it back to Kitty next.
I guess my final comment would be to say to parents today, you're doing a really good job. It may be a different job than your friend or neighbor is doing, but you are the parent that baby needs.
I'd just love to say, trust your intuition. You know, moms these days particularly need to trust their intuition. All the research is out there, and you can do things gradually. Get support and do what you need to do in a way that feels right to you, always following your heart. The heart is the ultimate connection with our baby.
Definitely be an informed health consumer. So look at the research out there. They're graded. I tell parents about the different levels of research and which is better. And get up to date. I mean, people buy a car and do more research buying a car than they do having a baby. So get the research, but recognize too, you know your child and your family. So the research is here, your knowledge is here, in the middle is what fits for you. So do with what fits. And most parents, there are many, many right ways to parent, few not so good ways, but most parents do a good job. And when you buy that book on parenting, there's one chapter missing, and that's about your child.
Well, what a great way to end the comment. Thank you for coming. I mean, part of the purpose of the show is to courageously use our voices, and you've done just that. We've explored those choices, and we've talked about trusting yourself and knowing and trying to figure out what's best for your baby. So I didn't come into this expecting that we were going to have any answers. I did come into it having spoken with all of you beforehand, knowing that we'd have an interesting conversation, a conversation that shows others how they can be conversing about these issues with those in their lives as well. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
In this final segment, we hear parenting perspectives from our panel of nurses who you met in the first episode. Then, regular guest Alicia wraps it up by reminding us that, at the end of the day, it's really about what's best for your family.
And all babies are different, right? So like if you get a colicky baby and you're a new set of parents and you don't have a support system and your baby's crying 4 or 5 hours a night, sometimes you want to try out different things. So every situation is different, and it's whatever works for you that can give you peace of mind and your baby peace of mind. Happy mom, happy baby.
Yeah, and I think that's key. Like, it's not just a thing that you decide the day you come back home with a new baby.
Exactly.
It's a fluid thing. If, you know, dad's waking up for work, maybe baby needs to go in their playpen or their crib outside the room so they can sleep properly.
Yeah.
And then the next day you're both off. It's a fluid thing, and you just choose what works for you that night, or maybe you're exhausted, or maybe you just want some alone time.
The transition to parenthood is just a venture into the unknown, right? You don't know how it's going to go. And that's the one spiritual thing really about birth and parenthood, is that it's a mystery. You don't know exactly how it's going to happen for you. You can prepare all you want. You can be the type A personality that's read all the books, everything, and you still are going to get smacked in the face with, whoa, this is intense, right? And to me, that's a spiritual thing, not only for the person going through it, but for the community surrounding that person, bearing witness to that transition. So it's a sacred thing, and I think as such, we need to treat it, you know, with a lack of judgment, with support, with, you know, an open heart, really.
The only thing that I would want people to know for the transformation to parenthood would be that it's so fleeting, that your children are so small for such a small time, and sleep doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't, the baby's not sleeping, the baby's not doing this, the baby's not doing that. Grandma says you should do it this way, Auntie says you should do it that way. It doesn't matter. It matters what is best for you and for them, and what gets you through each and every day. It's just, they grow so fast. My oldest one is 10. He's almost a teenager, and I can already feel him becoming his own person with his own ideas and his own way of doing things. So all these things that you worry about, that you stay up in the middle of the night when you first become a parent, they really don't matter in the long run. All that matters is that you're kind, compassionate, you're listening, and that you're that safe place to fall for your kids. And you just hope that you've raised them right and that they love you back.
Today we've seen how parents and professionals deal with differences respectfully. I hope that this episode has helped you to see that the kaleidoscope of parenting choices is something that can be celebrated as you journey on the transformation to parenthood. Thank you for joining us.